Hey everyone, this is a different video than I thought it would be. The subject is one I've promised for a while. I have tracked the existence and grades of Silver Age key books from the major Pedigree collections for a decade or so. I track the following pedigrees: Big Apple, Bethlehem, Curator, Dawn Maggie Thompson, John G. Fantuccio, Mass, Mohawk Valley, Northland, Ohio, Pacific Coast, Savannah, Sioux Canoes, Twin Cities, Western Penn, White Mountain, and Winnipeg. In those pedigrees, I'm tracing the following books: Adventure 247, Amazing Fantasy 15, Amazing Spider-Man number 1, Avengers number 1, Avengers number 4, Brave and the Bold 28, Brave and the Bold 34, Daredevil 1, Daredevil 7, Fantastic Four number 1, Fantastic Four number 2, Fantastic Four number 5, Flash 105, Flash 123, Green Lantern 1, Incredible Hulk 1, Justice League of America 1, Journey into Mystery 83, My Greatest Adventure 80, Sergeant Fury number 1, a whole bunch of showcases. Showcase 4, Showcase 8, Showcase 9, Showcase 13, Showcase 22, Showcase 34, Strange Tales 101, Strange Tales 110, Tales of Suspense 39, Tales to Astonish 27, Tales to Astonish 35, and X-Men number 1. I was originally going to just go through the table and basically read it off and comment on the relative difficulty or ease of certain books in general and how common certain high-grade copies were. And then I started to get into it, and I realized you could actually dig up scans of all of these books and talk about each of the individual books a little bit, because some of them are really interesting and they've sold, and I could put information against every one of these books. Not everyone, but a lot of them. And, I realized that would be like an 8-hour video. So what I'm going to do is kind of what I thought I was going to do, is briefly introduce the list in this video, go over the work that's gone into it, talk about some highlights, and then following up over a series of 30 videos, I'm going to discuss each individual comic I track in a little bit more detail. Some of them, like, Adventure 247 or Tales to Astonish 27, will be short, and then things like X-Men number 1, Hulk number 1, and Amazing Fantasy number 1 will each be like a 20-minute long video. It'll be fun to do, and it will give me great content to produce no matter what's going on in the rest of the hobby. So it'll keep me busy for a year or more. So it'll be fun. So let's do an overview of the table, and then we'll follow up with some individual title videos, starting maybe in a couple of weeks. The table should be relatively self-explanatory. It's a list of the CGC grades, or just letter grades if it was like from a catalog or whatever, of key Silver Age comic books from several notable comic book pedigrees. There are 3 separate pieces of information I'm looking for in this list. 1 is whether or not the book exists in a certain pedigree. 2, the CGC grade. 3, if there is no CGC grade, the original catalog or sale listing grade. In general, I'm also open to suggestions about what books I should cover, or other pedigrees. Actually, going through this, I'm kind of thinking about adding a couple of others. I mean, it's one of those sort of things. So, in the comments, let me know what books I should cover, if I should add any, because I started this 10 years ago, so things have changed, and there may be new pedigrees that that have a bunch of keys. Maybe, I don't know, but let me know in the comments. That's what you're here for. Well, no, you're here to hear me talk and hopefully enjoy it, but for me, it's great to have the comments. So. Okay, so if you look through it, and I'm going to have the link in the description for the actual list. A numerical grade indicates a CGC graded copy exists. A letter grade indicates a copy exists and was graded in a catalog or auction listing. And X indicates that a book exists. I know it exists, but there's no grade information. So let's take a look at the table quickly, with the promise that I'll do a deep dive into every key over time. So, Adventure 247 is one of the harder titles to find in a pedigree collection, with only 4 pedigrees represented. The Bethlehem copy is the best pedigree copy and the second highest graded, CGC 9.4. I just found out about the Winnipeg copy. There are 7 Amazing Fantasy 15 Pedigree copies. The most interesting is definitely the White Mountain copy. It's also the highest graded. It's a CGC 9.4 copy and was, the first $10,000 book, the first $39,000 book. It changed the hobby back in the day, but I will talk about this book in depth. Again, I've already talked about it in depth, but I'll talk about it in depth again because it is one of the landmark books in the hobby when I go over Amazing Fantasy 15. Amazing Spider-Man number 1 is both plentiful with 9 pedigrees represented and full of killer copies with 6 books higher than 9.0. The Curator, which was recently upgraded from 9.6 to 9.8, is the best at 9.8. There are 7 Avengers number 1 pedigrees in the list, as well as I don't track Rocky Mountain as part of this. There's a Rocky Mountain copy. The best pedigree copy is the Pacific Coast at 9.6. There are 8 Avengers 4 pedigrees in the list, as well as untracked copies from the Circle 8, Boston, and Green River pedigrees. There are 4 separate Boston copies in GPA, which is actually possible because a lot of those Boston books had multiples. The best pedigree copy is once again the Pacific Coast at 9.6. You'll see a trend with this list. There are a lot less pedigree DC keys, and they're much lower graded than the much later Marvels. Brave and the Bold 28 has 4 pedigrees. The Savannah is the best at 8.0. Brave and the Bold number 34 has 5 pedigrees represented, with both the Western Pen and Savannah copies coming in at 9.4. There's also a Bowling Green copy not tracked here. Daredevil number 1 is, not surprisingly, well represented. It's a little later, with multiple pedigrees containing actually multiple copies. 9 pedigrees are represented, with John Fantuccio, Pacific Coast, and I believe Twin Cities having multiple copies represented. The best copies are the Northland and Curator at 9.6. I just discovered the Northland recently, in the recent update. Daredevil number 7 has 7 pedigrees represented, with the best copy being the Pacific Coast at 9.6. Pacific Coast books are really nice. They're just really nice. If you start doing this stuff, you just see them all the time, and you're like, okay, that's the one we want. For sure. Fantastic Four number 1 is, maybe surprisingly, since it's the first Marvel, not the toughest Marvel. There are 6 pedigrees represented, with the best copies being the Mass and White Mountain copies at CGC 9.2. Fantastic Four number 2 is represented by just 3 pedigrees. It's not the toughest Marvel. Can you guess what it is? It's actually the toughest single book to find in a pedigree. The toughest Marvel is the number 1 book on this list for being difficult. I'll let you think about it for a minute. It hasn't come up yet. It'll come up later. So alphabetically, we're through F. So you can figure it out. I don't know. The best copy is the stellar White Mountain at 9.6. Fantastic Four number 5 is represented by just 6 pedigrees. The best copies are the Curator and White Mountain copies at 9.4. There's a Circle 8 copy as well, not tracked in this list. Now we're going to get into a long run of mostly DCs. Flash 105 is represented in 4 pedigrees. The best copy is the Big Apple copy, which is listed as near mint. I'm actually not sure where I got that from. It probably was just sent to me on the CGC forum. The highest graded CGC copy is the Savannah at 8.0. Flash 123 is represented by 7 pedigrees, including a stellar 9.4 highest graded Western Pen copy. I just added the Winnipeg copy in the latest update, which is a 6.0. Green Lantern number 1 can be found in 5 pedigrees. The Don Maggie Thompson at 9.0 and the stellar 9.2 Western Pen copy are the standouts. Everything else is low to mid-grade. The 2.5 Savannah must be a mess, since the page quality on those books is generally pretty bad. There's also a Rocky Mountain number 1, which is also low grade at 4.5, or mid-grade. Hulk number 1, Incredible Hulk number 1, is a surprising one to me. There are 8 pedigree copies, and 2 of the 9.2s are pedigree copies, Bethlehem and Northland. Justice League of America number 1 is represented by 5 pedigrees. The best copy is the Bethlehem at 8.5. Considering there are 2 9.6s, that's pretty low down the depth chart for pedigrees, right? You would expect, this is where we're going to find the best copies, which is often the case, but not always. Here's an example. Journey into Mystery 83 is represented by 6 pedigrees. The White Mountain copy is the best in 9.6, which is the single highest graded copy. That's $1 million book, right? It's got to be. I'll discuss it in more detail when I cover Journey into Mystery 83 in 3 months. Who owns that, by the way? I don't know off the top of my head. If anyone knows, let me know in the comments. Or if it's secret and you can't tell me, send me an email. And then I'll have it locked in my head and I can't share, but that's fine. I like having stuff locked in my head as well. My Greatest Adventure 80 is plentiful for a DC and also remarkable for the quality of the copies. There are 8 pedigrees represented and 3 9.6s, the Curator, Pacific Coast, and Western Penn. I just added a bunch, actually. The Don and Maggie Thompson, Mass, Savannah, and Twin Cities copies were all added in the last update. Sergeant Fury number 1 is in 6 pedigrees, with the best pedigree copy being the Curator and Don and Maggie Thompson collection. Those copies are 9.4. The Western Penn copy is newly added to the list. There's also a Circle 8 copy as well. Let's see. Showcase number 4 is in 7 pedigrees. The highest graded pedigree copy is the Bethlehem at 9.0. It's interesting because, in general, if you ask me, do you think Bethlehem copies are top for quality? Not really, right? It's top because there are 18,000 books. I mean, it's a gigantic collection. But you don't think of it as high grade. But then if you look at this list, it's actually the best copy of a lot of these pedigree books, and it's the best pedigree showcase number 4. We'll follow up at the end with the league table on which of the pedigrees has the most top copies, as well as some other stats, by the way. But keep track, right? Bethlehem is actually doing really well. Showcase number 8 is represented by 5 pedigrees. The Bethlehem copy is, once again, the best at 8.0. Although I have records of 3 separate grades, 8.0, 7.5, and 7. So I will research that for the Showcase 8 video and figure out if they're the same copy. I didn't go through. I'm assuming they are. They got bumped, but you can tell. You can see indications on the cut of the book, or a little tear here or whatever, whether or not it's the same book. So I'll look at that when I do the Showcase 8 video. Showcase number 9 is by so far the scarcest book in terms of pedigree copies. There are only 2. A Bethlehem CGC 8.0 and a Mohawk Valley VF-. Showcase number 13 is in 4 pedigrees, and as part of a trend that we're seeing right now, the best copy is the Bethlehem at 9.0. Showcase number 22, which is one of my favorite books. I don't think I've talked about it that much on the channel, which is funny because I love Hal Jordan. I love this book. It's in 6 pedigrees. The Western Penn copy is best listed at near mint. If it's that nice, it would be the highest graded by far. The top census copy is 9.4. The highest CGC graded pedigree copy is the Savannah at 8.0. Showcase number 34 is in 7 pedigrees, and the best copy is the Western Penn copy at 9.4. I just added the Don and Maggie Thompson copy to this list. There's a 5.5 Rocky Mountain copy as well. And now we're back to Marvel. Strange Tales number 101 is in 6 pedigrees, which actually kind of surprises me. But, the best copy is the Western Penn, which is a ridiculous 9.6. There's also a Bowling Green copy at 9.0. Strange Tales number 110 is in 7 pedigrees. The Pacific Coast copy, surprise, surprise, is best at 9.6. There are 7 9.6s in the census, by the way. That seems crazy to me. There's a Green River copy as well at 9.0, which is the first time I've mentioned Green River in this list today. Yeah. Green River is fascinating. When we get to the pedigree tier list, which is happening, just going to take a while. That's going to be an interesting one to talk about. Okay, Tales of Suspense 39 is in 7 pedigrees. Pacific Coast and White Mountain are tied for the highest graded at 9.6. Okay, here it is. Tales to Astonish 27 is the winner of the toughest comic to find in a pedigree collection. The best and only copy in a pedigree is the Pacific Coast copy, which is a 6.0. Crazy. So, and then Tales to Astonish number 35 switches it up a little bit, which there are 6 Pedigree copies, and the Western pen is a 9.6, which is pretty impressive. And then last but not least, X-Men number 1 is in 9 pedigrees, with the Curator and Pacific Coast copies both topping out at 9.8. There are 2 Pacific Coast copies, by the way. Additionally, there's a Green River copy at 6.0 and a Rocky Mountain copy at 7.0. So, that's it for now. We've walked through the chart and to give you a sense of what's out there. You can check, like I said, link in the description. Take a look yourself. There's some interesting stuff in there. We'll do a deep dive and some more research into individual books, starting with Adventure 247 and working our way through, probably finishing up in 2026 with X-Men number 1. So, but this is going to be fun. I mean, every time I post one of these videos, it's going to be pedigree copies of the coolest books in the hobby. I'm going to throw tidbits about them. It's going to be fun. So let's look at, just do a little recap. The rarest book in a pedigree collection is Tales to Astonish 27. The most common books in the pedigrees I track are Daredevil number 1, Amazing Spider-Man number 1, and X-Men number 1, all appearing in 9 pedigree collections. If we include the secondary collections, X-Men number 1 wins, as it's in 11 total. If you were tracking, you would know this already, but, I didn't actually offer to have you track until halfway through, so. Pacific Coast had the most top copies, with 8, followed by, surprisingly, Bethlehem with 7, and then White Mountain, Western Pen, and Curator all tied at 6. Interestingly, and I hadn't talked about this, the pedigree with the highest percentage of books identified, mostly because it's newer and they were all CGC graded so I could find them all, is Twin Cities. Twin Cities has 27 of the 32 keys identified, and they're in a CGC holder. They're all almost mid to low grade, but they're there, so that counts for something, right? I'm pretty sure White Mountain has a bunch of them, Pacific Coast has a bunch of them. I mean, some of these collections I know are much bigger. Bethlehem, actually, I'm sure does too, has books that aren't listed, but we know that Twin Cities had like a really high percentage of keys from the Silver Age. So, pretty cool. And with that, thanks. I'll be back later this week, I think. Or maybe right before Christmas, recording this in December of 2024. But anyway, I'll be back later this week or early next week with a review of the recent December 2024 Comic Connect auction, which is ending today and tomorrow as I record this. And I'll be starting a deep dive into these pedigree books as well. I'll start with Adventure 247 soon because I've already done the research. And really just there's a lot coming up on the channel. So if you haven't subscribed, please do. Like, comment. I really want to hear your comments about what I should be covering here with these pedigree books. And as always, thanks for checking out my stuff. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next one.